No, I cannot really say. I didn't really know that many trans stories, that many queer stories, to help me name what was happening. At a point where I was just looking at myself, where I was just with me and I did not have anybody from outside commenting, it was not a painful moment. It was curious, interesting. It became painful when I was hearing from people words like, "You look so beautiful." And I felt like shouting, "Me? Who? That creation that you're seeing, that is not me. Please do not put that to me." And the moments where I felt like crying and crumbling was when people started to use the words that make my skin crawl, like, "You always look so feminine," and that even now I'm like a bit disassociating. So I'm just, I think, describing it and thinking about it as if this interesting person that I know a little bit of, but it doesn't fully feel like mine, I think.
I suppose it's a difficult question because different days it can feel different to me. One day it can feel like I'm never going to reach where I want, or that I'm never going to be comfortable with myself. I'm always going to just hate myself and feel something's wrong. But there can be other days as well where I'll have a mix of imposter syndrome, and I feel like I'm being completely fake. People will just suddenly come out and say I'm fake and that I've just been tricking myself and tricked everyone else, and that will cause a lot of dysphoria for me as well. Sometimes it can be silly little things, like I think the other day my hair looked terrible and stuff like that, and I just wasn't feeling very feminine, and I really hated that. Or sometimes I could compare myself to other trans women or other women in general and think, I just look nothing like that and I'm never going to. And it's just then a feeling of like hopelessness and thinking, why am I doing this? And am I ever going to get there?
Gender dysphoria for me is fear. It's a fear of looking in the mirror and worrying that, you know, how I present and how I feel don't align, a fear of going out and being misgendered, a fear of feeling invalid or, you know, not good enough. It's all fear for me.
So hyper-awareness, I guess, of myself. I think that's probably the most pronounced feeling of, you know, particular aspects. I think almost the feeling that those aspects sort of colonize the rest of me, and, you know, you sort of get narrowed down to facial hair or having a flat chest or something like that doesn't feel correct or right. That narrowness sort of takes over the whole of the rest of your experience in a situation.
So gender dysphoria to me feels like inner turmoil, inner chaos, inner discourse, feeling quite emotionally disorganized, if that makes sense. Again, if I go back to witnessing my peers live the gender that I wanted to feel like, it was a constant exclusion and jealousy, I would say, if I'm being honest. I was always quite jealous of the girls that were suddenly, you know, their shapes would start to change, and, you know, it was always huge jealousy and massive turmoil internally. I would never bring it out. But yeah, that's how I would say the dysphoria feels. Chaotic, turmoil, disconnection.
I think if you boil it down, uncomfortable is the biggest word, but in like a million different ways. Obviously there's the really obvious, I personally don't particularly like my chest, and if I'm feeling a day where you can see it a little bit more, or I've worn my binder for too long and my ribs hate me and I need a minute off, that's feeling like your body doesn't fit you is a massive
feeling in a million different ways. Also, the more like social side of it, being seen and often like lumped in with a group of people that you don't necessarily think you belong with, or being treated in a certain way. And obviously there's the big thing at the moment about like pronouns. I love to use they, them pronouns. Not everyone's going to respect that, and I understand that, but there's obviously a feeling when someone doesn't or slips up, there's a feeling of uncomfortableness and just generally being misunderstood.
I mean, I wouldn't say I always manage it well. I have sort of spirals of bad moments, and sometimes just isolating is kind of necessary if it's really, really bad, when that's in fact possible, which it isn't always. But when I'm, I think, in a better place, I think talking to certain trusted people who can sort of re-anchor me, getting a sense of that project, I think seeing it as a process of, as I say, becoming myself, and actually seeing it as a journey can help a lot in terms of those moments where it feels like not enough has happened. I think seeing things in sort of static terms of, you know, you either are or aren't where you want to be is a real trap with dysphoria. I think dysphoria is naturally prone to very static, narrow, sort of atomized thinking.
You know, I just try a lot of self-validation. You know, I kind of be kind to myself and remind myself that, you know, the transition is a process. You know, it's called a transition for a reason. You know, all the good stuff isn't going to happen overnight. And so it's just about trying to remind myself to appreciate those euphoria moments when they come, and remind myself that the bad moments aren't going to stick around forever.
Another thing I do is I might chat to my friends and just ask, say I just need some gender affirming, and they will just help and just be really supportive, and then that will make me feel better and make me feel like, yes, this is right, and I've got people who accept me and they see me as I see myself.
I draw, or I go for a coffee, go to the cinema. Just do something to take my mind off stuff, so I don't have to think about what I'm dealing with.
I avoid looking myself in the mirror as the number one thing. I used to cover up the mirrors in my house, just so I can avoid looking at myself. Yeah, and then just kind of closing myself off. I work from home, so that kind of helps, but also it's a bad thing at the same time. Yeah, I kind of just retreat into my own shell.
To a certain extent, I would say there are things that make it easier. There are things out there. There are baggy clothes. There are binders. You can surround yourself with people that understand you, and I'm very lucky to have people in my life that do understand where I'm coming from, and you can kind of put yourself in a bubble of just seeing those people for a few days or being comfortable. But I think that my dysphoria, I'll speak for everyone at all, it's like a very personal and a you thing, and it is part of you, so you can distract yourself all you want, but it's still there to some level all the time, like a constant. It kind of comes and goes in like waves in a sort of way, but it's still there in some way all the time.
This sort of journey for me has been a long and steady one, to be honest. So when I was about 22, I decided, okay, I'm going to start growing my hair and become more feminine and stuff. And as time's gone on and I have changed and being on hormones and stuff, I actually find looking back at old pictures of when I was living as a boy highly therapeutic, because I get to compare who I was to who I truly am now. When I'm feeling, I get like a bit of a gender dysphoria wobble every now and again, and I feel, oh God, you know, I feel a bit weird. I then will take some time and look at old pictures and make a video and all that stuff, and it becomes, like I said, really therapeutic, because I get to see the amazing transformation that I've done all on my own. Nobody's helped me do that. I've done it. A moment of dysphoria turns into a moment of pride.
Look, I know who I am. I feel very happy with who I am. And really, it's that permission of allowing myself to be who I am and just going, this is who I am. If you don't like it, frankly, fuck off. You know, I don't need your permission. And stopping myself from requiring somebody else's approval. I don't feel I ever needed it on the outside, but I think probably on the inside I did. And I've let go of that. So I feel very much more self-sufficient in who I am, that I don't require anybody's help. I'm good enough on my own.
It's similar because each person, yes, experiences dysphoria separately, but then it's also quite amazing how many things are similar and how you go to someone, yeah, I've had that, or you can just completely relate. And I think that can build such a strong bond that I don't think cis people can really ever get. You just really understand what the other person's been through, because I can have other friends and family who can say they support me, but unless they're trans themselves, they really just don't understand on the same level. So I think to have someone who's actually been there to tell you, yes, things get better, yes, you can get through this, and I felt better afterwards, it's just a reason to keep going.
People don't necessarily feel very safe in a lot of other medical settings. So I think we see a lot of stuff that would probably manifest in a GP surgery or a mental health space if that was where people felt comfortable, but it's not at the moment. Like around when Brianna Gray died, the appointments around that were really sad. Because you could see how it was like affecting people when they came in. That's probably part of the illness. You really see how people can be affected by external things, or even by how they're feeling, especially if they feel like things aren't progressing in the way that they want it to, or things aren't going as fast as you would maybe want. And it's very difficult to try and talk people through that, because I can't make things go faster as much as I wish I could. Like there is just a time frame that things take. But the problem with that is so individualized for everyone. I don't really have answers when people ask me that, and I know that's what people want, and it's finding a good way to phrase it that doesn't feel like I'm fobbing off their queries.
What makes you happy? Where you feel you're at ease, where you can look at yourself and think, you know what, I'm happy in this body. And for that, it's very different, like it is for a cis individual, you know? I remember when I was 18, I was called all kinds of names. I was a big girl, it wasn't very nice. I wouldn't have had that euphoria about my body then, you know? But everyone is different, and we all identify differently. And what we try and do is enable patients to get to their happy place, where they can get on with their lives, where they can become confident and happy where they are. We know the definition for gender dysphoria. I think a lot of people don't quite understand that it's when the physical body doesn't align with someone's gender identity. So your gender identity is here. It doesn't mean the physical body is going to reflect that. And that's where the dysphoria comes in, where there's a disconnect for patients. You know, so our job is in, you know, aligning their gender identity with the physical body. It's up to every patient to decide where they want to go, how far along this line, because the euphoria is in finding your happy place.
It takes a long time to make peace with yourself, and that's where the euphoria starts to come in. And it's not like you're jumping around and dancing, maybe some people do, but I didn't. But it was just a scenario of the confidence increased, my knowing of myself, my steadiness in myself, you know, how I behaved around other people. It's not that I changed personality, but I became more confident, I became stronger, I stood up for myself more. And that comes from that confidence of, you know, just being allowed to, giving yourself permission to be who you actually have always been. It's never a question that you were stepping into new shoes, they were always there. It's just, would you wear them?
I started using they, them pronouns in 2017, and the first time that I heard my friends use them was incredible. I felt so light, I felt so happy, I felt very like full, and even at the time I knew that that wasn't the end of my journey. It was still such a validating moment for me, that's something that I hold on to very dearly. And I've had lots of moments like that since. I'm very lucky too. And I came out as trans a month before my 3rd wedding anniversary, and my wife got me a World's Best Husband cup, and that was a moment of tears. I will admit there were some tears in that moment, but that's also just a really visceral euphoria moment for me as well. It's something that I think about when I'm having a bad day, to be honest. I suppose it just feels like a light that starts in the center, and it just grows as you sort of revel in the feeling, and it finds all of the little dark places, and it finds all of the places that don't have anything, and it just makes you just feel a lot more complete, I suppose. It sort of fills in the gaps and tethers things together that maybe we're just a little bit floating around. Almost an exploding, but not in a bad way. That kind of feeling.
I think it's more peace. I think it's more peace in who I am. You know, when I look in the mirror, I see myself looking back at me, and I never used to have that. I always said, look, the only thing I ever want is to look on the outside how I feel on the inside. That's it. There's nothing more complicated about this. And I feel I've achieved that. And so when I look at that, it's more a sense of satisfaction that I got there, and that, you know, that there was a lot to learn along the way, but I've taken all of that with me, and all of that has made me a stronger, better, wiser person.
I remember the moment when I thought, okay, this is what I need to do. And it was America's Next Top Model. Like, I know it sounds really cheesy, but I remember seeing the girls on there and thinking, oh, they're just so beautiful, and that's how I want to be. And so from then I lost all of my gymnast weight, my muscle, that all went, and I grew my hair and stuff. I've been on the fence about gender hormone therapy for about 10 years. When I was tipsy, I could talk about it. When I wasn't, I couldn't talk about it. The pandemic hit, we had a lot of time at home, and that's when it really came out really strong. And the way I describe it is like a pan of boiling water. And that pan of boiling water, it would come to a boil about me wanting to do this, and I'd get really scared and turn the gas off, and I wouldn't do it. But over the pandemic, I had nothing keeping me busy. So that boil became a big simmer. And as fate would have it, I stumbled across a trans girl called Sammy's Vanity on Instagram, and she showed a video of her as a boy to now, and I was like, it literally hit me like that. I thought, that's me, and I just burst out crying, and that's when I thought, I'm gonna do it.
The second I walked out of the GP's office, having told the very first person, I was just like, right, this is it, this is where I'm going. That's first thing, is to go to the GP. So before I told anybody else, I went to the GP and I had a conversation with the GP, which I had to go back twice because I told the nurse first, and she was like, you don't tell me. So I had to go back and make another appointment with the doctor, but then I did that. But once I came out of that, I was like, that's it, I've walked through that door now. I've walked through that door. Now it's just a question of just following your nose and keeping going. You've done the hardest bit, which is to admit it out loud for the first time.
I mean, there's loads of little moments, I guess, more than like one big one for me personally, that I'm like, that was it. And I think that very much at my age, obviously people discover things later on and whatever. I think I'm very much in like a transition moment. Not completely, I think that my identity is my identity, but I know that in 2 years' time I'll probably look very different and act very different to how I am now. But loads of little moments, like the first time I had a binder on, the first time I discovered the sort of clothes that I wanted to wear. I grew up in musical theatre really, which is a very gendered environment, I would say. People are very hyper femme and people are masculine, and I kind of think men can get away with being a bit more femme, but the way that I've seen it is that girls I never really had anyone that looked a bit different. And I remember going to uni for the first time and being away from that group of people and discovering who I was more, and the outfits fitted more, and kind of being allowed to be more myself. I think those couple of months felt very euphoric.
My mum used to hide some of her clothes in my wardrobe because there wasn't enough space. And I think like maybe 12, 13, trying on some like very oversized heels and just clumping around my bedroom whilst no one was in the house. That was nice. They were like 3 or 4 sizes bigger than me at the time.
I just get these moments where I'll do something like my hair or something else where I'm slowly changed to what I want, and I just feel me. I don't feel like I'm having to hide myself, be fake or anything like that. I'm just feeling like, yeah, this is what it feels like to actually look how I want or act how I want. And it feels very freeing and liberating, because before you can feel very much caged. But now I feel like I can do anything I want and there's just no restrictions.
I can be myself. I can be who I want to be, who I am, and I'm not wearing a mask. I am my genuine self, and I feel I can be happy for once and enjoy life. Like, I'm not hiding anymore. Like, I'm out publicly at work with my friends. Mostly everyone is super supportive. It's had a massive impact of both mental and physical health since being out. All my friends said I'm more confident, I'm a lot happier, and I'm actually more social now as well. And they've all commented like it's great to see the real you.
Looking in the mirror and seeing yourself and knowing that this is you, I see myself. I look in a way that makes sense for me. I feel like I look handsome, but not handsome for someone. Handsome as in having that spark of authenticity, of strength, of joy, of being in agreement with what I want to be. It is actually, thinking about it now, quite amazing to look at myself in the mirror, feel that this is me, feel that I have the connection, and that I like that person that I'm seeing. That I don't see any disagreement.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, when I first realised I was trans, gender dysphoria hadn't really been a thing. But I guess, I mean, with other people, they have gender dysphoria before they figure out they're trans. So I don't know.
I actually think that gender euphoria is enough. And I wish all beautiful trans people to have gender euphoria.
I think you can look at a gender and really appreciate what's going on, but doesn't necessarily mean that you're unhappy with you. You know, I've got friends that dress every which way, but they're not taking action. They don't feel sad about it. They're just experimenting it. And so for me, that's just somebody who's just expressive and open. But when it becomes something that is so inward and full of turmoil and you don't want to leave the house, it affects you as a human being, then that's dysphoria to me.
I never described myself as dysphoric. I didn't feel that I was. That when I look back, I realised that once I admitted to myself that this was time to do something about it, the next 9 months were filled with agony and pain and misery. All of it self-inflicted, 100%. And it was the fear of how the world would view me, treat me, stuff like that. That dysphoria was an external force. I felt it was an external force, but it was just me making up an idea in my head is that it's all going to go to hell now, and you know, and you're stepping into a fire on your own. Whereas actually the opposite was true. You know, again, it's a lived experience. You got to do it to know it. But I was always a whole person. You know, I didn't need to go down this road to be a whole. I was already a whole person, but this has just added to it. It's just given me another air of freedom, and it has given me a new perspective, and it has opened new doors, and it has changed my life. It's all good stuff, though. We're so villainized, and our experiences are almost pushed aside so much that you almost feel ashamed for wanting to transition or for wanting to be yourself. And I think that that's where a lot of the dysphoria comes from, is other people trying to force you into boxes that you don't want to be in.
As long as you know what you're doing and you can understand the implications of what you're doing and how it works and really what is involved in it, and you can consent to things, I don't really think you need all the other bits that are involved in it, or how much diagnosis and how many hoops people have to jump through with it. Because actually to get hold of anything is a long old process. I think people don't really think about it. A lot of the time when you hear people go, oh well, you never know, people could change their mind. I'm do you know how long it takes for somebody to get to me? And we're a overall relatively fast service comparatively.
We all experience a gender euphoria at different times in our lives, that sense of well-being and being at ease and being at peace with yourself and being happy with yourself, in finding that place. Some people go through life and I honestly believe they never find it. The support that there used to be and the connections, the societal connections, have made it very, very difficult. There's been a disconnect. So it's very difficult for people to, I think, find that support and peace.
Dysphoria is basically a null point diagnosis. It's basically just the trans illness that we have to pass a checklist to get access to care. It's basically just a gatekeeping measure. Everyone exists with gender dysphoria. A lot of people are getting cosmetic surgeries, cosmetic lifts and all of this, and that's because of gender dysphoria. It's just we don't want to call it that because then it kind of breaks the illusion of what this kind of means. The moment we start policing labels and we police these labels as to who can hold what, you are going to exclude someone. That kind of reliance on you have to tick this to be trans is just, it's needless. It's just a gatekeeping measure for people and pushing people out of feeling that sense of community. I'll have conversations with people or friends prior to them coming out, and they're struggling with feeling whether or not they are necessarily trans because they don't know if they experience gender dysphoria or they don't think they do or something like that. That questioning is so hard to get through to understand yourself that it means that people will spend years just trying to answer that question with stuff and feeling like they're not enough. In my ideal way of how this kind of runs is that we do everything we can to get rid of that not enough feeling and just allow people to play with things. Labels are just like clothes. You try them on, you see how they fit, you see how they feel, you see if they're comfortable. If they're not comfortable, you can take them off again. Nothing has to be forever within this with regards to labels, with regards to pronouns, with regards to all of these things. They're just interchangeable things that you can play with, mess around with, see if it's comfy, see if it fits. And that's ultimately how we know ourselves and explore ourselves.